This GameBoy Advance has been completely modded to bring it up to 2026 standards. It now features a beautiful IPS display, a custom white shell with black buttons, and even USB-C charging support. Today I'm going to show you how I upgrade it and how you can do the same. And believe it or not, it's easier than you might think. So before we get started, I want to give you a good look of the console before we transform it. The most noticeable thing for me is the original screen. It has no backlight, so in dark spaces, the screen is not viewable. Although you have to respect the quality of this device at the time of its release, it's 2026, and we've been spoiled by backlit OLED screens, so I think this thing deserves to be upgraded too. To start off, I'll remove all of the screws from the back shell. These are Phillips screws, and then there's one tri-wing screw under the batteries. After removing these, the back shell lifts off, revealing the motherboard. The motherboard is held down by only two Phillips screws, so it's really easy to remove. I'll also remove the screen flex cable to prevent bending it when we remove the motherboard. And that's it for the disassembly. It's safe to say that devices have got way more difficult to repair. So let's take a look at the mods that we will be installing today. Firstly, of course, we have the new shell. The original shell on this console is really scratched and is also missing the battery cover, so I'm replacing it with a brand new white shell and some black buttons to contrast it nicely. Next we have the CleanAMP board by Retro6. This kit includes a custom PCB and a new speaker for the console. This PCB is designed to replace the old audio controller and make sound not only louder, but much more clear. Next, let's move on to the Dehum kit, but before we do, here's a message from today's sponsor, JLC PCB. If you're building anything with custom electronics, you already know how important reliable PCB manufacturing is. They make it incredibly straightforward to turn your design files into professional quality boards. You just upload your Gerber files, choose your specs, and they handle the rest. Whether you're prototyping a small project or producing a large batch of boards, their turnaround times are fast and the pricing is surprisingly cheap. This will save you a huge amount of time, especially on those complex builds. If you've got an idea sitting in your CAD software, this is the step that brings it into the real world. Head over to JLC PCB, upload your design, and get your project manufactured today. Next up we have the Dehum kit. This PCB intends to remove the traditional humming sounds that the Game Boy speaker produced. Today we're going to begin by installing the CleanAMP kit. The first step is to remove the old speaker. This can be done by adding some flux to the original solder joints and then adding some new solder to the pads. For anybody wondering, I use 6040 tin lead solder and Amtech flux. I'll leave some links in the description box below to where you can purchase these. Once the new solder has flown onto the pads, we can simply heat up the solder and give the wires a light pull to remove them. Now let's install the CleanAMP. This type of board is commonly referred to as a QSB, which is an abbreviation for Quick Solder Board. Essentially, it's a board that sits on top of the original motherboard and uses a technique of flowing solder from one board to the other, kind of like a waterfall. I'm going to start by adding some flux to the points we need, and then pre-tin them with my solder. For anybody who's not familiar with the term pre-tinning, it just means adding some solder onto a pad so that it's easier to work with when we want to connect a wire, or in this case, a PCB. Now I can proceed to add some solder to the CleanAMP PCB and make the connections needed from the motherboard. With QSBs like this, positioning is everything. If the PCB is not lined up properly, then installing it is going to be way more difficult than it needs to be. I typically solder one of the connections first and then use it as an anchor point to get my alignment correct. So I'll heat up the joint and then move the CleanAMP into position with my finger, and then remove heat from the joint so it sticks in place. Once it's all lined up, it's as simple as adding flux to the remaining points and flowing solder to make the connections needed. Now the new CleanAMP board has two pads which the new speaker will connect to instead of the original points. Once again, some flux and solder will do a great job of this. I've seen countless people make this mistake when soldering, and it's really simple: not cleaning up the flux after you've used it. Flux is actually corrosive over time, so it could damage the board if it's not cleaned up properly. It's very important to have some isopropyl alcohol on deck to remove any flux residue. I use alcohol with a purity of 99% and a Q-tip to clean off the flux, as you'll see throughout this video. Next, let's move on to the Dehum kit, which I admit is a little bit more fiddly to install. This is because the PCB sits on top of components, so you won't get that flush install that you're probably hoping for. Although the install is much the same as the CleanAMP, that being the process of firstly pre-tinning the points that we need, and then making the connections with some solder. It's important to note that the two capacitors that we need to solder to are quite small, so we don't want to put too much heat on them to avoid blowing them, or straight up melting them off the board. On the other side of the PCB, however, there is a battery terminal that we need to connect to, which will require lots more heat to solder to. Personally, I recommend changing the temperature on your iron to do these 2 points. It's a little bit inconvenient, but honestly it doesn't take too long to do, and it's going to make the job much easier. I personally always solder at 420 degrees Celsius, but I've seen other people recommend 360 or even 340. I think the temperature you use really depends on how and what you're soldering, so be sure to experiment and find a setting that works for you. I've also found that applying some downward pressure when soldering these points was helpful to get the connections a bit closer together. And I cannot stress this enough, flux is your friend. With an install like this, it's better to use too much rather than too little. So, we've got the CleanAMP and the Dehum kit installed, so that's our audio sorted. Now let's move on to something a bit more visual, the IPS screen. I'll be replacing the old screen with a modern backlit IPS screen. This means finally we can play the Game Boy in the dark or in brighter environments like out in the sunlight. The colours on this screen will also be way more vibrant, so games will look better than ever. In the box we have the included screen lens protector, ribbon cable, adhesive, bracket, and of course the IPS screen itself. The ribbon cable that we need to install for this screen is really easy to solder down. It only requires 3 connections to be installed and is a flexible PCB, so it's really easy to move around and get into place. Before installing it, we will need to add flux and solder to points TP2, TP9 and TP8. As usual, we pre-tin the pads with a small amount of solder and then align the flex cable. I'm using the same anchor technique to ensure that the flex cable is aligned properly. Making these connections is as easy as placing the flex cable over top of the point and applying heat and some downwards pressure to tack it in place. Once it's installed, we now have to assemble the shell and drop in the new screen. Grabbing the front part of the shell, we need to drop in the black buttons and then cover them with the included button membranes. Now we can drop in the screen, making sure that it's seated towards the top right of the shell. These screens are designed to fit the original Game Boy shells, but since we have a third-party shell, we will need to use the included bracket to hold the screen in place. Next, we grab the screen controller board and connect whichever flex cable our console supports. My console originally used a 40-pin connector, so that's the one that I chose. The screen comes included with both types of cables, and the best way to know which one to use is to simply compare it to the connector of the old screen. After connecting the screen to the driver board, I added some black electrical tape to hold everything in place, and also connected the flex cable, which is soldered down to the TP2, TP9 and TP8. Now it's time to drop the motherboard into the front of the shell, making sure that none of the flex cables are caught in between the cracks or bent. At this point I installed the motherboard screws to keep everything in place, and then plugged in the top 40-pin screen connector. The controller flex cable should be gently folded and pushed upwards behind the motherboard so that it doesn't interfere later in the assembly. Next, we install the side plastic pieces, along with the shoulder buttons and the power button slider. Now we can install the back plate and screw it all back together. A quick test of the screen confirms that everything is working as it should, so now we can install the new screen lens. I opted to use the one with the Game Boy Advance logo on it, as I like that original retro look, but you can also buy ones with different logos, or even blank ones if you like more of a minimalist design. I cleaned the screen with a cloth to make sure that I wasn't trapping any dust or dirt in between the lens and the screen, and then stuck down the lens with the included adhesive backing. And we're all done! New speaker, new screen, new shell, new buttons. Now let's talk about how we control the screen. Holding the two bumpers and the start button will bring up the screen's inbuilt menu. Here we can control brightness, colors, and screen positioning. Screen positioning is important as we may see that the screen is too far to the left or right based on how we installed it, or what shell we used. So to correct this, we want to select this option and then use the right and left bumpers to move the picture into the center of the screen. Next, the pixel grid option gives you the choice to emulate pixel lines, so you can pick either horizontal or vertical lines, or lines both ways to make a pixel effect. Personally, I'm not really a fan of this. I prefer to leave the screen without any lines. But for people who are more used to these older screens or want a more retro look, it's a pretty cool feature to have built in for free. We've also got the option for different color filters, so we can have the screen on its original color setting, a more vibrant color setting, black and white, or green, which represents the original DMG Game Boy. And the last option is brightness, which is fairly self-explanatory. Now you might be wondering, why didn't you install the USB-C charging port like you showed at the start of the video? And that's because it's actually not meant to be installed internally. The USB-C kit sits inside of the battery compartment where the AA batteries usually go, so it's easy to install and remove. How it works is there are two rechargeable AA batteries that sit inside the battery slots as usual, and then the PCB pushes in between the contacts of the batteries and the console's battery terminals. It then breaks out these connections into a USB-C port, which is used to recharge the AA batteries. It's essentially just a more elegant way of charging up AA batteries, but it does look really nice and it's really easy to install. That is, if you don't mess it up like I did. I accidentally put the board in upside down and it resulted in the batteries getting incredibly hot. Something shorted out and the batteries overheated. This was my fault, although it got me wondering why this kit didn't have any sort of reverse polarity protection. For those of you who don't know what this is, it's a basic form of protection that would mean that the board would kind of disable itself if it were installed incorrectly, but clearly this board doesn't have that. I got in contact with Luke from Retro6, and he told me that there is no protection on the board as I suspected, and that because of how the board is designed, it's essentially just shorting metal to metal, so protecting against that wouldn't be possible. However, he did message me later with a solution, saying that all you'd need to do is cut off the top left tab to prevent this issue. That way it would work if it was installed correctly, but wouldn't be connected if it was installed the wrong way. So the console is fully modded and set up. I've been using this console for about a month now, and I'd like to give you my thoughts on all of the mods and my general experience using a modded Game Boy Advance. Firstly, the screen is amazing. It really feels like I'm playing new games even when I'm replaying old classics. The colors are great. In particular, I really like the vibrant color mode. The screen gets bright enough that I can play it outside. I've played it in cars, buses, outside, I've played it in the dark, and I've not found one case where the screen wasn't visible. I've also found the new speaker to be of very good quality, however the CleanAMP does have a few problems that I've noticed. Firstly, I really struggle to get the console to output a low volume. It feels like with this mod, the options are either loud or nothing. To its credit, it's a lot louder than the original speaker, but even then, the volume wheel just feels way too sensitive, like you have to get it to a specific spot and almost not even spin it and just kind of push it to get it in the spot that you want. And weirdly, turning the volume wheel to the highest option turns off the sound completely. To be honest, it's probably not a mod that I would install again. I'd probably just swap the physical speaker for a new one and not install the CleanAMP. Although, on the sound of topic, the Dehum kit works especially well. It totally removes the old humming sound from both speakers and in particular from headphones. I would definitely install this board again on future consoles, and to be honest, when playing with headphones, I struggle to see myself being able to play on a console with this mod not installed. Aside from those issues, everything was really great when put together. The shell and buttons feel great, and overall the mod wasn't even that difficult to do. If you're somewhat experienced with soldering, then I have no doubt that you'll be able to install this mod. The USB-C charging is great too, once I obviously got it working without burning myself. The only thing missing for me is some sort of battery indicator. I'd love a screen or even a few LEDs that give me some kind of indication of how charged the battery is. Maybe even incorporating the battery level into the Retro 6 screen. These are just some ideas I'm throwing out there. Honestly, it's not that bad, and I usually just put the device on charge when the classic LED turns red, but a bit more information would be nice. So the ultimate question: would I do this again? And should you mod your own Game Boy Advance? And my answer is yes to both of those things. If you want to replay your old classic library, get an IPS or an OLED screen for this thing. It's seriously impressive, makes the device playable in many more environments, and just generally makes the colors pop a lot more. Out of all these mods, the screen is 100% the one that I recommend the most. A new shell is also a really good choice, but I know some people like to keep the old aesthetic of the original shell. So in that case, what I'd recommend is maybe keep the original shell, but get a new screen lens, because the old ones are made out of plastic and get scratched really easily. The CleanAMP I would not use again. I think it caused way more issues than it solved. I would definitely recommend the Dehum kit, especially if you're going to be using headphones. And the USB-C kit is great too, assuming you have the brain to put it together and not give yourself first-degree burns. But ultimately, I now have what in my opinion is the best way to play original Game Boy games. I think I'm going to start with Pokemon Emerald. I also like playing a bit of Tetris. Feel free to drop any classic game recommendations down below. I'd like to replay some of the games from this era. And of course, if you found this video entertaining or helpful at all, make sure to leave it a like and leave me a comment down below letting me know if you've done mods like this and more things you'd like to see me do in the future. For now, thanks for watching. Of course, thank you to JLC PCB for sponsoring this video, and I will see you in the next one.